A series of civil disturbances in France began on June 27, 2023 following the killing of Nahel Merzouk in Nanterre. Residents started a protest outside the police headquarters on June 27, which later escalated into rioting as demonstrators set cars alight, destroyed bus stops, and shot fireworks at police. Clashes continued throughout the night across France, including Toulouse and Lille. By June 29, over 150 people had been arrested, 24 officers had been injured, and 40 cars had been torched. Fearing greater unrest, Gérald Darmanin, Interior Minister of France, deployed 1,200 riot police and gendarmes in and around Paris, later adding an additional 2,000. On June 29, Darmanin announced that the government would deploy 40,000 officers nationwide. Now, if we talk about the history of riots in France from the beginning of this present century, which includes the French riots of 2005, also known as the French banlieue riots or the 2005 Paris suburb riots, were a series of violent disturbances that occurred primarily in the suburbs of major French cities, particularly Paris, in October and November 2005. The riots were predominantly driven by social and economic issues, including high unemployment rates, discrimination, and a sense of marginalization among the youth, especially those from immigrant backgrounds. The two teenagers of North African descent, Bouna Traoré and Zaid Benna, were electrocuted while hiding from the police in an electrical substation. Their deaths sparked widespread anger and led to accusations of police brutality, as the officers were allegedly pursuing the teenagers without reasonable cause. Following the deaths, riots erupted. The unrest continued for several weeks, spreading to other major cities across France. 2006 youth protest in France, commonly referred to as the CPE protests or First Employment Contract protests, were a series of demonstrations and strikes that took place across France between January and April 2006. The protests were primarily driven by young people, including students and unemployed youth, who opposed a new labor law known as the Contrat Premier Embauche, CPE, or First Employment Contract. The CPE was a measure proposed by the French government, led by Prime Minister Dominique de Villepin. The contract would have allowed employers to terminate the employment of workers under 26 years old without providing a specific reason during the first 2 years of their employment. The proposed law sparked significant controversy and widespread opposition, particularly among students and young workers. For employers to exploit young workers, the protests began in early February 2006 and gained momentum throughout the following weeks. Hundreds of thousands of students, along with workers from various sectors, participated in marches, strikes, and occupations of universities and other public spaces. 2007 Villiers-le-Bel riots were a series of violent disturbances that occurred in the suburbs of Villiers-le-Bel, located in the Val-d'Oise department of France. The riots took place over a period of several days in late November 2007 and were characterized by clashes between local youths and law enforcement authorities. The riots were triggered by a tragic incident that occurred on November 25, 2007. Two teenagers, Mushin Seholi 15 years old and Larami Samura 16 years old, were riding on a motorbike when they collided with a police car at an intersection in Villiers-le-Bel. Both teenagers were killed in the accident, and the circumstances surrounding the collision remained disputed, leading to allegations of police misconduct and negligence. News of the teenagers' deaths quickly spread through the community, and tensions escalated as local residents expressed their anger and frustration. Violent protesters clashed with police, and the law enforcement responded with tear gas and other crowd control measures in an attempt to quell the unrest. 2009 French riots, a series of riots that occurred on Bastille Day, July 14, in the commune of Montreal, an eastern suburb area of Paris. A series of riots took place in July 2009 in France. On Bastille Day in the commune of Montreal, an eastern suburb area of Paris, French youths set fire to 317 cars. 13 police officers were injured. On July 9, many youths started a protest in Firminy near Saint-Étienne, after the death of a young Algerian man, Mohamed Ben Mouna, in police custody. Ben Mouna's parents rejected the official account of suicide. Riots on Bastille Day are a frequent occurrence in France as the disaffected protest high unemployment rates and failed integration policies for minorities. More than 240 people had been arrested near Paris. The injured officers suffered mainly from hearing difficulties after having been targeted by youths armed with fireworks and small-scale homemade explosives. The 2013 Trappes riots refer to a series of violent disturbances that took place in Trappes, a suburb located in the Yvelines department near Paris, France. The riots were sparked by an incident involving a confrontation between police and a Muslim woman who was wearing a face veil, niqab, in violation of the French law banning full face covering in public spaces. The incident occurred on July 18, 2013, when police officers stopped the woman for an identity check. According to reports, the situation escalated into a physical altercation between the woman's husband and the police officers. The woman's husband was subsequently arrested, which triggered a wave of anger and protests from local residents. The protests quickly turned violent, with clashes erupting between groups of young people and law enforcement authorities. Rioters engaged in acts of arson, vandalism, and attacks on public property, including vehicles, bus stops, and a police station. The police responded with tear gas and other crowd control measures to contain the unrest. The riots received significant media attention, sparking a broader national debate about integration, religious expression, and the relationship between the state and France's Muslim population. The incident in Trappes was seen by some as a reflection of deeper societal issues, including Islamophobia and the perceived stigmatization of French Muslims. The French government responded to the riots by sending additional police reinforcements to the area and implementing security measures to restore order. 2014 Sarcelles riots were a series of violent disturbances that occurred in the town of Sarcelles, located in the northern suburbs of Paris, France. The riots were sparked by pro-Palestinian demonstrations held in response to the conflict between Israel and Gaza during that period. On July 20, 2014, a large pro-Palestinian protest took place in Sarcelles, which has a significant Jewish population. The demonstration started peacefully but later turned violent as a group of individuals, some reportedly from outside the area, began to engage in acts of vandalism, looting. The rioting and violence lasted for several hours, with clashes occurring between the rioters, the police, and members of the Jewish community who sought to protect their property. The police responded with tear gas and other crowd control measures to disperse the rioters and restore order. Dozens of individuals were arrested in connection with the unrest. The Sarcelles riots were part of a wider wave of pro-Palestinian demonstrations and protests that took place across Europe and other parts of the world during the Israeli-Gaza conflict.
If you like my video, please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon for more updates. Thank you.